The episode begins right as a game finally ends after 3 long years. But for the protagonist, a hardcore gamer from Japan, 3 years is nothing. He's disappointed, calls it trash, and says a real game should take at least 10 years to beat. So he immediately searches for something harsher, a hardcore game with garbage balancing. The moment he types it in, his screen shifts to a mysterious fantasy world. An unknown company offers him an endless game set in a land of swords and magic, and he's instantly hooked. He checks difficulty, easy, normal, and a bizarre option called Hell Mode. The description warns of despair and says leveling takes 100 times the experience. He's unfazed and selects Hell Mode without hesitation. Next is class selection: swordsman, spear user, sword master, hero, demon lord, and more. But Summoner catches his eye because it has the highest difficulty rating and is labeled alpha testing. That only makes it more appealing, so he chooses it and hits start, accepting he's basically the game's guinea pig. The instant he confirms, he vanishes, leaving behind an empty room. He feels warm and comfortable at first, then everything tightens and he can barely breathe. A moment later, he's pushed out into a new world, reborn as a newborn baby. His father beams and names him Alan. Alan accepts the name easily, even though he used to be a 35-year-old white-collar worker named Kenichi Yamada, broke and stuck in a dead-end life. Now Alan is 1 year old. He can't talk yet, but he can think clearly and understands everything around him. Japanese seems to be the common language here. He realizes he's been born into a serf family in a frontier settlement that hasn't even been officially named yet. Pioneers pay taxes to a ruling lord to farm and develop the land. His father, Rodan, works himself to the bone. And his mother, Teresia, is gentle and kind. Alan is their only child for now, but he can tell more kids will probably come. One night, Teresia puts him down and leaves to eat with Rodan. Alone, Alan tries to open his stat window, and nothing happens. He keeps trying over and over until he's almost convinced it won't work. Then, on one last attempt, a glowing book appears above him. He screams, his parents rush in, and he quickly dismisses it and pretends to sleep. They assume he was sleep-talking and leave. Once alone again, Alan summons the book back. It's his grimoire showing his stats. Level 1, class, Summoner. He learns summon and create gain experience separately and level through use. Right now, he can only make H-rank insects and beasts, the weakest tier. The grimoire flips to a message from Elmia, the god of creation. She apologizes for the delay, explaining that since Summoner is still being tested, the paperwork took time. She also warns there are no questions, refunds, or cancellations. Alan tries to summon an insect. Nothing happens. He experiments, growing frustrated, until he realizes he probably needs to use Create first. When he does, a card appears, an H-rank insect with Endurance +1 and Agility +1. He's thrilled, but his mother walks in, so he hides it and pretends to sleep. The next day, he activates the card. It becomes a huge grasshopper that jumps at his face. He tries commanding it, but it ignores him and hops away. Checking the grimoire, he names it Dina and notices a buff section. Those +1 stats boost him, not just the summon. He gets excited and raises his voice, and Teresia rushes in, panics at the giant insect and stomps it, killing his first summon. Alan keeps experimenting and creates an H-rank mouse, Mousy. It's dumb like Dina, but at least it follows simple orders. He learns he can stockpile up to 10 cards per creature, and the stacked cards increase his stats. 10 Mousy cards raise his attack by 10. Even as a toddler, he can become much stronger than a normal child, though Hell Mode makes progress painfully slow. One day, Rodan comes home covered in blood. Teresia panics, but it's from a hunt. Rodan proudly killed a great boar. In fall and winter, the village men go monster hunting, and Rodan offers to show Alan the carcass. Alan agrees, excited to see a real monster. Rodan carries him on his shoulders. On the way, he points out a flock of bird monsters called albans, which fly north as fall arrives. Rodan admits he named Alan after a monster, Albaharan, because it represents freedom in the sky, though Teresia scolded him for naming a child after a monster. Alan dozes off, then wakes to see the great boar up close, huge and terrifying. A man named Gerda walks up, calls Rodan the heavyweight champion, and the men applaud. Rodan brushes it off as luck. Alan introduces himself politely, surprising Gerda since he's so young. Gerda mentions his daughter is the same age but not nearly as well behaved. When Alan asks how strong great boars are, Gerda says they're C-rank monsters, and it takes about 20 men to bring one down. Alan stores that as a benchmark. 10 months later, Alan is almost 2. He reaches Summon Level 2 and Create Level 2, unlocking Expansion Level 1 and the Grimoire's Notes feature. He can now create G-rank creature cards. He gains a fusion skill, and his inventory space doubles, meaning double the buffs. He tries fusing 2 H-rank Mousy cards, but the Grimoire says he doesn't have enough MP. He even tries creating a G-rank Beast card, but still can't. His max MP isn't high enough yet. By age 3, Alan has built up plenty of cards. G-rank beasts, insects, and birds. He fuses 2 cards and creates a G rank bird, naming it Chappie. When summoned, it lands on his shoulder. Its ability is voice mimic, and it proves it by repeating Alan's words perfectly, which Alan immediately sees as useful for deception. He summons more G-rank beasts, a frog named Hopper and a mole named Molly. Hopper's provoke makes it glow and bounce as a distraction. Molly's dig carves out a huge hole, and Alan realizes it can set pitfall traps. He's thrilled by how deep and tactical the summoner system is. This is the hardcore gameplay he wanted. Then he falls into the hole. Right after that, the bell rings at 3 p.m., meaning Alan already knows what's next. Krina, Gerda's daughter, arrives to play Dueling Knights. Alan isn't excited, but he can't escape. Krina immediately challenges him with a wooden sword. Even though it's just play, Alan takes it seriously because she's insanely fast and merciless. Alan has poured buffs into agility, but he can barely keep up. Krina breaks his wooden sword and keeps attacking anyway. By the time Alan's parents rescue him, he's already beaten down. Around this time, Teresia is pregnant again. Even after the beating, Alan helps her carry vegetables, and she thanks him warmly. That night at dinner, Alan tells Rodin he wants to help with harvesting since Teresia is pregnant. His parents are shocked. Alan insists he's strong enough, though he keeps his true stamina secret. Teresia says kids shouldn't work, and Rodin agrees, telling Alan he'll have to do farm labor eventually, so he should enjoy life while he can. Alan realizes farm work is brutal and understands why they refuse. Teresia mentions she's seen Alan throwing rocks at a tree outside. Rodin asks why, and Alan says Rodin told him monsters live in the forest, so he's practicing to protect his mother. Rodin laughs and praises him, but Alan is really testing whether he can unlock skills beyond summoning. Teresia asks if he'll protect Krina too, and Alan agrees, while thinking about how scary she is when she plays. Rodin then brings up the appraisal ceremony. Teresia explains that at age 5, a divine ceremony reveals your talent, and Rodin says a good talent could help Alan escape serfdom. Alan latches onto that hope. Later in winter, Alan checks on Dina again and realizes he can keep a summon active for an entire day now. Real progress. But Krina shows up again, he hides the grimoire, and they play knights. He blocks more than usual, but she still beats him down. Then Rodin comes home, and as Teresia goes to greet him, Dina suddenly leaps at her leg. She panics and falls, and the shock triggers contractions. The baby is coming. Krina runs to fetch her mother while Rodin and Alan scramble to help Teresia. Alan has no idea what to do and wishes he'd played a birthing sim. Rodin looks just as lost, even though it's his second child. Thankfully, Krina's mother, Matilda, arrives in time. She orders the men out, saying the women will handle it. Rodin and Alan are forced to wait outside while Matilda and Krina help Teresia all night. By dawn, a baby boy is born. Rodin proudly names him Mash, and Teresia immediately hopes it isn't another monster-inspired name. Alan wonders why he reincarnated. He still wants to max his levels and dominate the system, but he's also grown attached to this family. He wants to free them from the grinding life of serfdom, even if he doesn't know how yet. When Alan turns 5, the appraisal ceremony finally arrives. Rodin explains it's mandatory for everyone, from serfs to nobles, and that a talent could change Alan's future. But there's heavy competition since many kids are turning 5 at the same time. Right then, Krina arrives and insists they go together. As they approach the commoner village, she talks excitedly about becoming a knight if she's appraised as a swordswoman. Alan notices well-groomed children he didn't expect to see among commoners, and he hears whispers that his dark hair and eyes make him look like a serf. 3 priests step outside the church and announce that Elmia, the god of creation, blesses all children equally with opportunity. They cite heroes who rose from low status, like Cassius the Saint and Diverg the Sword Lord. Alan connects this to the game's rules. High-tier classes often start from low social classes, meaning everyone has to be appraised. Inside, Alan notices the statues of the gods and recognizes Elmia in the center. The priests begin with village chief Deboji's son, Palomas, who places his hand on a crystal ball. His talent appears on a metal plate, Merchant. His father celebrates. Alan notices attributes are shown as ranks instead of numbers, and he secretly checks his grimoire to confirm it matches. As the ceremony continues, Alan sees that not everyone receives a talent, making it a big deal. A boy named Dora is appraised with the talent Axe User, and he even has an A-rank attribute, the highest Alan has seen so far. Then it's Krina's turn. The crystal glows brightly, and everyone reacts as she's declared a Sword Lord, one of the strongest talents possible. Gerda is ecstatic, calling it the jackpot, while Krina is disappointed because she wanted to be a swordswoman. Alan isn't surprised. This explains why she's always been absurdly strong. Finally, Alan steps up, expecting his parents will learn he's a summoner. He touches the crystal ball, and it shines brighter than ever. So bright it knocks him backward. Rodin checks on him, but Alan jokes that Krina has put him through worse. Rodin asks the priest to read the results since they can't. The priest announces Alan has no talent. Alan knows that's wrong and checks the plate himself, only to see glitched text where his talent should be. His mood crashes, and he blames Elmia for failing to debug the system. Now nobody will know he's a summoner. Rodan still takes him home, and Teresia comforts him. At dinner, Rodan tells Alan talent doesn't matter. He'll always be their pride and joy. Teresia agrees. Alan knows they're poor enough to not even own a bathtub, but he's still grateful he was born into this family. That night, Alan checks the grimoire again. All his attributes are E rank, and he finally realizes why. He's the only one playing on Hell mode. All the children at the ceremony are level 1 like him, meaning the rank system reflects growth potential. Since Hell mode progress is 1/100th of normal, his stats are displayed as that fraction. For most people, that would be crushing. For Alan, it's fuel. He swears he'll prove hardcore gaming is superior, and he's fully prepared to flood the developers with complaints until they fix that glitch. Time passes, and Alan notices Rodan acting strange. Teresia says he's been off since coming home late last night. Soon after, they visit Gerda's house to celebrate Krena's Sword Lord talent. Krena proudly tells Alan Sword Lord is even better than Swordswoman, meaning she'll only get stronger. Alan jokes that she already tramples him daily. Matilda mentions the chief gifted celebratory liquor earlier, so they're opening it. But Rodin stays tense and bitter. He congratulates them stiffly, and Gerda responds with the same tension, insisting guests drink first. Alan suspects jealousy, but Rodin isn't petty. Something else is wrong. Rodin goes to pour the first drink, but Gerda refuses, saying he won't drink anything poured with that sour look. He tells Rodin to stop killing the mood, until Rodin suddenly slams the bottle down and shouts that he is happy for them. Then Gerda drops the real issue. Rodin said he was cutting ties with their family. Rodin admits he doesn't want to, but insists Krena's talent is extraordinary. She could join the knighthood, serve the nation, maybe rise into nobility, so she shouldn't waste time socializing with serfs. Alan realizes Rodin thinks he's helping them by pushing them away, even though they never asked for it. Rodin argues Sword Lord is too big a deal, but Gerda snaps that it changes nothing. Alan tells Krena to fix it, and she grabs her wooden sword, ready to intervene, until Matilda and Teresia step in and shut it down. Afterward, Alan asks Matilda if they've always been like this. She says fatherhood mellowed them out, but they used to be hotheads who threw punches constantly. Teresia smiles and explains the four of them grew up together as childhood friends. Matilda adds that 10 years ago, when people started talking about settling this frontier land, the four of them chose to go together. They even planned their houses as a pair, which is why both homes share the same design. Rodin says it was easier to build both houses at once with shared labor and supplies. Gerda brags he set the support beams. Rodin says he built the walls and floors, and Gerda claims he did the roof. With liquor and nostalgia, the mood finally softens, and Rodin and Gerda make peace. The next day, while working, someone rushes in with news. The Order of Knights is coming to see Krena. Rodin and Gerda head to the commoner village with the kids, and a crowd gathers fast. Alan notes that word about Krena being a sword lord is already spreading. Dora approaches Alan again, flaunting his axe user talent and mocking him as a talentless loser. Before Alan can respond, Krena steps in and says Alan is here because he's strong. Dora points to Alan's E-rank attributes and serf status. Krena lunges like she's about to bite him, but Gerda holds her back. Then Deboji announces the knights have arrived. The crowd parts to reveal the captain, a swordmaster named Zenoff. Krena is practically vibrating with excitement. For 3 years, she and Alan have played knights, and now she's finally seeing the real thing. She introduces herself proudly, and Alan wonders if she's about to be taken away immediately. Gerda warns Zenoff that Krena is only 5 and has never used a real sword, so she wouldn't stand a chance. Zenoff doesn't care. He says if she truly is a sword lord, age shouldn't matter, unless Gerda is lying to fool Baron Granville. Gerda denies it, but Zenoff warns that falsifying appraisal results is punishable by death. They'll verify Krena's talent right now with a fencing duel. Gerda begs for mercy because his daughter's life is at stake. Zenoff coldly says she fights, or they execute her and her family on the spot. Alan is stunned at how extreme it is, and the crowd watches in tense horror. But the moment Krena sees a real sword, she runs to it with shining eyes and asks to use it. She lifts the massive blade, nearly as tall as she is, and challenges the vice captain. The vice captain introduces himself as LeBron and accepts. He blocks her first strike easily. Dora watches in disbelief as Krena swings the huge sword like it weighs nothing. Alan figures her sword mastery must be around level 5 from their daily play fights, but he doesn't know if that will matter against a trained adult. LeBron counters. Krena barely blocks and Gerda panics. She charges again, and LeBron kicks her hard enough to send her into a wall. Gerda snaps, but the knights restrain him. Rodin and Alan try to move too, but they're held down as well. Alan is furious. This is too much for a 5-year-old. Still, Krena stands back up. Then an intense aura erupts around her. Even LeBron looks shaken. He blocks rapidly, but Krena's strength spikes so high he can't hold his ground. Alan realizes she's using an extra skill. Krena lands a final blow and snaps LeBron's sword clean in half. Zenoff ends the duel immediately and orders them to lower their weapons. Krena looks confused. It ended so quickly, then casually thanks LeBron, calling him strong for a gramps. LeBron tries to correct her. He's only 24, but he's too defeated to argue. The crowd erupts. A 5-year-old just beat the vice captain of the Knights. That seals it. Krena is a genuine sword lord. Gerda rushes to hug her in relief and pride. Rodin is just grateful she's okay. Zenoff admits there's no disputing the result, praises Gerda for raising a sword lord, and apologizes for his behavior. Gerda is still furious, but Zenoff asks to discuss Krena's future. Gerda hesitates, so Zenoff offers to let him bring friends for support. That convinces him. They meet at Deboji's residence for a meal. Alan can tell Gerda is still upset, and he doesn't blame him. Alan understands why Zenoff and Deboji's son are there, but he doesn't know why Dora and Rodin are also present. Dora probably just refuses to be overshadowed. Meanwhile, Alan decides he's stealing some momo fruit from the table to bring home. Zenoff tells them to eat freely and introduces himself properly as captain of the Knights. He explains his lord sent him to confirm whether a sword lord truly existed here, and now it's undeniable. He then tells Deboji the settlement was originally meant to be named after him once it was fully established. But since a sword lord was born here, the Baron has declared it will instead be named Krena Village to honor the occasion. Gerda is shocked, but pride replaces it instantly. Deboji accepts respectfully. Zenoff apologizes for the sudden change and mentions that 3 years ago a sword lord was supposedly born to a count's family. That person failed expectations and was reappraised, revealing only ordinary swordsmen. After that, investigations uncovered nobles exaggerating talents, so the kingdom now verifies appraisals strictly, hence the harsh duel. Zenoff apologizes again and asks Gerda to raise Krena well. When she turns 12, she can attend the academy and potentially serve the royal family. He adds that an instructor will eventually be sent to the village, and any child with talent must study hard to earn admission. Krena tells Alan he has to study with them too. Dora mocks Alan again, and they start bickering. That's when Zenoff finally notices Alan. Rodin explains Alan is his son. Gerda introduces him, and Zenoff immediately recognizes Rodin as the great boar hunter. Zenoff stands and shows Rodin real respect, explaining the Baron loves the great boar meat supplied by this village every winter. Zenoff tells Rodin to take it as praise straight from the Baron, calling him a hero for taking on the most dangerous role in the hunts. Rodin shakes his hand, stunned. On the way home, Rodin admits he never expected a serf like him could be acknowledged by powerful people. He tells Alan he'll do great things too because he has good genes. And right then, Alan casually reveals he snuck out fruit for Teresia and Mash. Alan finally manages to level up his summoning skill. The moment he opens his status screen, he sees a brand new ability has unlocked, Enhance. This allows him to strengthen existing summons and access a new tier of creatures, rank F. His card storage also expands from 20 slots to 30. Naturally, Alan immediately starts overthinking it. Does he still need to fuse cards like he did with Chappie? Or does Enhance work differently? And more importantly, what kind of summon comes next? His imagination runs wild as he pictures something legendary, maybe even a dragon. It's been nearly 2 years since his summoning skill last leveled up, so he's itching to test it as soon as night falls. That evening, Alan volunteers to wash the dishes, hoping to finish chores quickly so he can experiment in secret. While he works, Mash asks if they're getting another sibling. Rodin says it could be either a brother or a sister. Teresia confidently predicts a girl, and Rodin immediately starts brainstorming names, until she cuts him off, reminding him that she gets naming rights for girls. Rodin apologizes and asks if she already has something picked out. Right then, Alan's MP hits maximum, and his grimoire materializes. As he opens it, he accidentally reads Elmia's name out loud. His parents instantly scold him, reminding him that speaking the Lord's name carelessly is forbidden. Flustered, Alan apologizes and quickly changes the subject, pointing out that Rodin's old scar looks bigger than before. Rodin explains that the scar changed because he passed the judgment of the gods during the boar hunt. Curious, Alan asks what that means. Rodin explains that, on rare occasions, a burst of divine energy occurs during a hunt, instantly restoring stamina and healing wounds. To Alan, it sounds exactly like leveling up. He can't see Rodin's stats, but he's sure his father must be incredibly high level. Even so, Alan knows he himself is still stuck at level 1. No matter how much his summoning improves, he doesn't gain SP unless he defeats monsters, and serfs aren't allowed to leave the village freely. He asks Rodin if he can join the hunts, but Rodin immediately shuts it down. Hunting is deadly, and people die every year. Alan understands and backs off. Later that night, lying in bed, Alan reflects on a message he received earlier. He checks his grimoire and confirms his suspicion. The administrators finally responded to his non-stop complaints. The glitched appraisal text has been fixed, along with his stats. At first, Alan had assumed his attributes were low because Hell Mode slowed progression. But when he sees the corrected numbers, he's stunned. His MP and intelligence are both rank S. and he now has the same number of high-rank stats as Krina. For the first time, he feels genuinely rewarded for all his grinding. Eager to test Enhance, Alan opens the skill menu and strengthens Dina. The creature's stats increase, especially the buff-related ones. But Alan notices something interesting. The buffs applied to him don't change. Curious, he summons Dina to see the difference. One glance tells him everything. Dina is clearly stronger. That's when it clicks. Being a summoner isn't just about summoning monsters, it's about refining them. Satisfied, Alan relaxes until Teresia walks in, sees Dina, and panics. Without hesitation, she stomps it flat. The next morning, Rodin prepares to head out hunting. As Teresia sees him off, Alan reflects on something important. Enhancements don't disappear after summoning. That means as long as he has MP, he should enhance every card he owns. Teresia calls him over so he can say goodbye, and Alan politely wishes Rodin a safe day. Later, while hanging laundry, Alan realizes he's tested nearly every fusion combination possible, except one: F-rank insect plus F-rank bird. He tries it, and finally succeeds. A new card appears, rank F grass type. At first, Alan's disappointed by the low rank, but then he sees the buff, MP recovery increase. That instantly changes everything. At his current pace, leveling would take decades. This card alone could shave off years. Excited, Alan summons it. Instead of a creature, an apple appears. He names it Oppo, immediately deciding it's useless in combat. According to the summoning details, Oppo's ability is Aroma. When Alan tells it to activate, the apple sinks into the soil and a seedling sprouts. A calming scent fills the yard, and for a moment, Alan imagines turning the dull backyard into a botanical paradise, before remembering he's not a farmer. Teresia approaches with MASH and calls Alan in for lunch. Alan tells Oppo to return, but nothing happens. When Teresia asks about the seedling, Alan awkwardly claims he doesn't know, silently wondering why Oppo won't respond. Later, Alan practices fencing with Krena and loses again. Still, she praises him, noticing he's gotten stronger. Alan estimates his sword mastery has reached level 3, and with his expanded inventory, his resistance and attack are improving. He even wonders whether Oppo's aroma might affect combat. Later that day, Alan is back to throwing stones at a tree. In his mind, he's already thrown over 20,000 times, but the skill still won't level up. Mash complains that it's boring and asks when they're going home. Since Teresia became pregnant, Alan has been watching Mash and helping with chores. He decides focusing on summoning is more efficient, but keeps throwing stones anyway, hoping the next one might finally trigger something. Mash asks about the trees, and Alan explains what he discovered about Oppo. The aroma shortens MP recovery time, letting him stay active longer. It's subtle, but incredibly useful. That night, Alan notices Rodin is late. Teresia grows anxious, since Rodin said he'd be working nearby. Suddenly, Gerda's voice echoes outside as several men carry Rodin back on a wooden board. Teresia and Alan rush to him while Gerda urges Rodin to stay awake, reminding him his family is here. Gerda explains Rodin took a severe blow to the stomach. They barely kept him alive using a rare healing herb called Floor Miller. Teresia is shocked. It's incredibly valuable, but Gerda explains the knights gave it as an apology for what happened with Krena. Without it, Rodin wouldn't have survived. Someone angrily blames a careless peasant. Tensions flare. Mash starts crying, and Alan carries him inside as the others leave. Once things settle, Alan asks Gerda what really happened. Gerda explains that the village chief ordered peasants to join the hunt to increase profits. Normally, peasants never participate. It's too dangerous. But after the knight captain publicly called Rodin a legend, they believed they'd be safe. Neither Gerda nor Rodin liked it, but they couldn't refuse the order. Some peasants refused to train seriously. When the hunt began, they were given the simplest task, luring the boar. But when the moment came, they panicked, broke formation, and ran. One fell, and Rodin stepped in to save him, taking the full hit. Gerda asks Teresia and Alan to stay strong while Rodin recovers. That night, Alan stays awake beside them, feeling helpless. For the first time, he questions his obsession with strength. Power without purpose is meaningless. This isn't a game. This world is survival. He realizes he has to protect Mash and the sibling yet to be born. The next day, Gerda returns with Rodin's share of meat and promises to look after the family through winter. Alan vows to take responsibility, and this time he proves it with action, carrying heavy loads and helping nonstop, shocking everyone with his strength. He decides he's done hiding. With Krena already rising as a heroine, no one will care if a talentless serf draws attention. Family comes first. Later, Gerda teaches him how to harvest potatoes, amazed by his strength. Alan jokes that he inherited it from Rodan. He complains that the Baron takes more than half their harvest, but they still need supplies to survive winter. Then the village chief arrives with fruit, having heard Rodan is recovering. The peasant responsible apologizes, but Alan glares at him. Rodan forgives him calmly, telling him to be more careful next time. Alan is stunned by his father's kindness. Teresia, however, firmly reminds the man that his mistake nearly cost Rodan's life. The man accepts her words. Rodan smiles weakly and tells everyone to calm down. Alan realizes he truly has the best parents. The next day, Alan clears a wide area for experiments. He summons Hopper, and colorful frogs immediately leap at his face. He sets traps, hides nearby, and activates Provoke. The frogs hop around, drawing attention. It's a basic trap, but if it works, they'll survive winter. Just as Alan is about to give up, a massive shadow appears. A rank B alba heron descends, the monster his name comes from. It devours the frogs effortlessly. Alan stays hidden, realizing his Provoke attracted something far stronger than expected. His instinct says run, but he notices his skill leveled up, doubling buff capacity from 10 to 20. He decides to gamble. Alan charges with his wooden sword. The alba heron swats him aside instantly. He summons Hopper again, experiencing real combat for the first time, but the monster annihilates every summon. Worse, Alan realizes something terrifying. Each destroyed summon removes its buffs. As his strength drains and the alba heron looms closer, Alan finally understands the true danger of being a summoner. And for the first time since arriving in this world, he realizes this could be the end. With no other options left, Alan summons 2 leeches. They immediately latch onto the alba heron, draining its blood and weakening it just enough to give him a brief opening. His strength has dropped significantly after losing several summons and their buffs, but he stays calm. He already knows how this fight will end. He only needs one clean, decisive strike. Alan summons his wolves again, and orders both the wolves and the leeches to attack at the same time. As they surge forward, Alan charges in with them. Using the opening they create, he delivers a powerful sword strike straight to the alba heron's head. The blow is overwhelming. The monster collapses and does not rise again. His grimoire activates immediately, announcing that he has defeated an alba heron and earned 100 experience points. Seeing the message, Alan is overwhelmed with excitement and takes a moment to process what he has just accomplished. Afterward, he brings the alba heron back to his family. They are shocked that someone they once thought of as weak managed to defeat a dangerous monster entirely on his own. Gerda steps in to help and shows him how to properly bleed the monster. After securing the body, she carefully explains how the meat should be cut, which portions are safe to eat, and which parts should be discarded. She also explains that monsters contain magic stones, and any stone from a monster above D rank is subject to kingdom tax laws. However, she dismisses the loss, noting that magic stones are useless to poor serfs anyway. Instead, she suggests they use Rodin's injury as leverage, explaining that Alan was forced to hunt in his father's place. With that, they should be able to negotiate a better share of the meat. The next day, Alan and Gerda visit the chieftain's office. At first, the chieftain insists they only deserve a small portion, but after repeated reminders of Rodin's severe injuries and the fact that a child had to risk his life, the chieftain finally relents. He agrees to give them a larger cut, just as planned. He allows them to keep all of the meat, taking only the wings and the magic stone. Alan then pushes further, asking whether this arrangement can continue in the future. Gerda supports him, and after careful consideration, the chieftain agrees to maintain the same deal going forward. 3 days later, Alan uses the same strategy to confront 2 more alba herons. Having already defeated one, his confidence is much higher. With his leeches, wolves, and wooden sword working together, he defeats both monsters quickly and efficiently. Since his first victory, Alan has been hunting once every 3 days. This time, he finishes without losing a single summon. His grimoire lights up again, confirming that he has defeated 2 alba herons and gained 200 experience points. More importantly, it announces that he has reached level 2. Overjoyed, Alan checks his stats. His HP and MP are fully restored after leveling up. However, he notices that his stat increases are only about 60% of what they should normally be. He doesn't dwell on it, assuming the effects may scale gradually. Even so, he is deeply satisfied. His effort has finally produced visible results. As he reflects, he begins to believe this is the trial of the gods Rodin once described. The realization fills him with pride and also with responsibility. He knows he will need to tell his family the truth soon. Later that day, Alan returns home with 2 alba herons. Rodin is stunned that his son managed such a feat in a single day. Afterward, Alan meets Krina for sword training. Even while sparring, his thoughts keep drifting back to hunting. With migration season in full swing, albaherons are plentiful. He calculates that if he defeats about 20 more, he could reach level 3. His thoughts are abruptly interrupted when Krina lands a solid blow to his head, ending the match. Alan acknowledges her victory, and she quietly leaves. That night, Alan decides it's time to explain himself to his parents. He knows he cannot mention games or reincarnation, so he offers a different explanation. He tells them that when he was 1 year old, he received an oracle from Elmia, the god of creation. According to him, the oracle means he was granted heightened wisdom and physical strength, along with trials far beyond what ordinary people face. Roden immediately understands. Earlier that morning, he had noticed a wound on Alan's face had already healed. Everything now makes sense. Alan has already endured a divine trial. Teresia struggles to accept this, especially since Alan's appraisal last year showed no talent. Alan explains that he received another oracle months ago, stating that his attributes appeared low because his trials progress far more slowly. His talent, he says, was simply too new to be recognized at the time. Roden is stunned. This means Alan does have a talent after all. When asked what it is, Alan admits he doesn't know, saying Elmia gave no details. He feels guilty for hiding the truth, but revealing his summoning ability would be dangerous. Teresia embraces him, praising his bravery. Roden asks what Alan plans to do next, and Alan says he intends to overcome every trial placed before him. Roden is proud, but reminds him to ask for help when needed. He also advises Alan to keep this secret, warning that others might mistake him for a false prophet. The only exception will be Gerda, who constantly boasts about Krina's achievements. Winter arrives, and Alan begins processing one of the stored albaherons. He travels to town with Gerda to trade the meat for supplies. Gerda has already heard about Alan's blessing and isn't surprised. She always believed he was special. Along the way, Alan asks about the difference between commoners and serfs. Gerda explains that it comes down to status and taxes. Serfs must pay 3 gold per adult and 1 gold per child annually. To become a commoner, a family must pay 10 gold per person. Alan realizes that with another child, his family would need 50 gold. Alan spends the day trading and learning how bartering works. By evening, he returns home carrying firewood. On his next visit, he goes alone and carefully documents market values for future use. At a herb shop, Alan asks about MP restoring medicine. The merchant says such items are far too expensive. Alan silently copies the shop's inventory into his grimoire. When he asks about Muller's flowers, the merchant becomes upset, explaining how Gerda once bought the last one without full payment. Alan realizes that flower saved Roden's life. Without it, his father would be dead. In gratitude, Alan gives the merchant albaheron jerky and thanks him sincerely. On his way home, Alan encounters Dagora, the axe user from the appraisal ceremony, along with Palomas. Dagora strikes Alan and demands submission. Alan draws his wooden sword and offers a fair fight. Dagora returns with a weapon, but Alan easily defeats him and walks away without further conflict. That night, Roden removes his bandages, fully recovered. Teresia warns him to take it easy. The next day, Dagora challenges Alan repeatedly and loses every time. Meanwhile, Mash begins sword training with Krina, exciting Alan about the future. Soon after, the new baby is born. They name her Mila. Not long later, Roden returns with Gerda and announces that the chieftain has summoned them. The Baron has ordered them to increase boar deliveries from 10 to 15, requiring commoners to join the hunt again. Teresia is furious, but Roden explains this is not a request, it is an order. Failure will result in more serfs being sent to the village. Alan realizes what that means. Less land, more hardship. Gerda adds that the Baron plans to demand 20 boars next year. Roden concludes they must hunt more often. Alan speaks up. Refusing the order is impossible. Even if commoners are inexperienced, they must be made useful. Drawing on his experience, Alan asks them to trust him. He believes the wisdom granted by Elmia has given him a plan that can work. A few days later, Alan arrives alongside the commoners and other servants, all ready to put the plan into motion. One of the men comments that it took Roden a long time to recover. Roden apologizes but assures everyone that he's fully healed now. Another servant asks if Alan is really coming with them. Roden confirms it, explaining that they'll be using Alan's strategy for today's hunt. But Alan himself will only observe and won't take part in the fighting. Alan thanks them for allowing him to come, even though he wishes he could fight alongside them. His stubborn father refuses. Still, Alan is relieved he can help train the newcomers so they can hunt more boars. More than anything, he never wants to see his father injured like that again. The same commoner approaches Roden once more to apologize, but Roden cuts him off and tells him to stop apologizing and focus on his role. Jera gives the signal, and the gates open. Alan is instantly captivated. This is his 7th year living as a servant, and it's the first time he's ever left the village. In the distance, he sees White Dragon Mountain, where wild boars descend every autumn in search of food. Legends even claim a white dragon lives there. For Alan, this finally feels like a true fantasy world. The moment breaks when a servant asks if Alan is already scared, implying that's why he isn't heading deeper into the hunting grounds. Roden orders everyone to calm down and take their positions. As the boar is drawn in, Alan realizes just how terrifying it is up close. Gerda, leading the first team, orders them to drive their spears into the boar. They struggle to hold it back and call out for Roden. Roden leads the second team from the flank, stabbing into the boar's vital points. Alan immediately understands how effective this method is, and why they've managed to hunt so many boars for the past 10 years. Still, he can't shake the thought that relying on unfamiliar people to finish the job is dangerous. He instructs the commoners to move into position. Roden gives the command, and they thrust their spears forward. The boar collapses. Alan predicts that even a single strike should be enough for the commoners to gain experience. And he's right. Power surges through them as they realize they've passed their first trial of the gods. Alan is satisfied with the result, especially since the boars are C rank. Even one hit should provide a large amount of experience. He quickly checks his grimoire, only to realize he gained nothing. Because he wasn't counted as an active participant, being nearby wasn't enough. The commoners thank him, saying his guidance changed everything. Alan shrugs it off, but inside he feels frustrated. The hunt succeeded, yet he's left with a bitter sense of defeat. The next day, a servant asks if Alan is going hunting again, and he confirms it. Alan asks him to convince Roden to let him use a spear, but the man immediately refuses, saying Roden would punish him for even suggesting it. Another servant admits he wanted to join the hunts as well. His friend tells him to quit being a butcher and come along, but he refuses. His wife is pregnant, and he won't take that risk. Still, he's glad there will be more monster meat to share. Alan calls him uncle and asks for a favor. He brings him to the stored Albiron meat and asks him to carve it properly, offering 2 packages of meat per Albiron as payment. The man agrees, and the work begins immediately. Alan thinks it's a smart deal. He doesn't need all the meat himself. This stock is meant for trade. His real goal is earning 50 gold coins to free his family from servitude, and hiring a butcher in town would cost far more. Soon after, 2 more commoners are added to the boar hunting group. They nervously ask if it's really safe, but the experienced hunter reassures them, saying it worked before and telling them to relax. Alan realizes that if they keep adding people gradually, they'll eventually have enough manpower to split into 2 teams, dramatically increasing the number of boars they can hunt. Even so, he still wonders why the Baron demands so many boars when the land doesn't seem short on food. His thoughts are cut short when the shout rings out, the boar has arrived. Gerda orders the front line to pin it with spears, then signals the newcomers to strike. They manage to bring it down, and once again the commoners feel themselves growing stronger as they pass another trial of the gods. This time, Alan gains experience as well. He deliberately placed Dina in front of the boar so it would be crushed, forcing the system to count him as a participant. He tells himself that on this difficulty, any method of gaining experience is fair, and silently apologizes to Dina. 3 months pass and the new year arrives. They're invited to the chief's house and receive sweets and gifts to take home. Later, the parents ask if they had fun. Alan says yes and asks why they didn't attend. Gerda replies that she has no patience for pompous people like that. As they eat, Gerda asks if the chief said anything about them. Alan says he seemed very pleased. Roden adds that if things continue this way, they won't struggle to meet the new quota of 20 boars. Then Gerda notices something beside Alan and asks what it is. Alan says it's an alcoholic drink the chief gave him. Gerda and Roden both smile, and Alan realizes they've taken the bait. He insists it's a gift meant for him. Gerda scolds him, saying everyone knows he's too young to drink. Alan calmly replies that they can keep the drink if they beat him in a contest. Gerda accepts instantly, while Roden tells her to slow down. Alan then makes his condition clear. If he wins, he gets to participate in the boar hunts. That's when both adults realize they've fallen straight into his trap. Gerda asks what the challenge is. Alan says it's arm wrestling. Confident, Gerda goes first. Before starting, Alan checks his grimoire and confirms he's stacked every available attack buff. He places his hand on the table, and at Karina's signal, the match begins. At first, Gerda dominates with ease, but Alan slowly pushes back, increasing his strength bit by bit until he turns the match around and wins. He admits it was close and estimates Gerda's strength around 150 to 200. Then it's Roden's turn. When Alan grips his father's hand, he feels the rough calluses and hesitates, but he still doesn't hold back. The match starts evenly, until Roden realizes his son is serious. Roden unleashes his full strength and overwhelms Alan completely. Alan smiles as he loses, now certain his father's strength is on another level, possibly 300 or more. Alan hands over the drink, and the men immediately start celebrating. The wives scold them for being so rough with a child. Teresia encourages Alan, and Roden tells him he isn't weak. His father is simply too strong, which is why Alan still can't hunt boars. Alan agrees to wait, but promises that one day he'll beat him. After a few drinks, Gerda gets drunk and rudely demands more food. Matilda snaps and throws him to the ground, shocking everyone, especially Alan, who immediately suspects her strength must be C rank or higher. Not long after, Alan notices his summoning has reached level 4, and his grimoire expansion reaches level 3, unlocking storage. He now has access to E-rank creatures and new species, though some require synthesis. His card capacity increases again, and with his massive mana pool, he believes he can chain summons freely. If he creates 40 E-rank cards, his buffs could skyrocket, enough to challenge his father again. He tests storage by tossing in a stone and instantly sees a list of stored items. He tries adding more and realizes there's no apparent limit. Having such a powerful ability at such a low level doesn't make sense. Special abilities usually appear when they're needed, so there must be a reason. Later, he attempts to summon an E-rank insect and fails, despite full mana. The grimoire explains that E-rank summons require magic stones. Remembering his hidden pouch, he pulls out a stone from horned rabbits, but it's still not enough, until he places the stones into storage. This time, it works. An enormous E-rank butterfly appears. Just then, his mother enters. The butterfly hides behind Alan and he considers explaining, but doesn't. She calls him strange and leaves. Once she's gone, Alan quietly celebrates. Another day, Alan is suddenly attacked, only to realize it's his own summon, an E-rank saber-toothed tiger. The creature grants a +10 buff, doubling his strength. He names it Tama. When he tries summoning a bird, nothing happens until he remembers to insert magic stones again. It becomes clear he'll need a massive supply of stones. That afternoon, Alan tells Rodin about the horned rabbits. Rodin doubts they're still around, reminding him the village dug a ditch years ago. Alan is disappointed. His easy source of stones may be gone. The next morning, Alan asks Pelmoy about magic stones. Pelmoy explains they're embedded near a monster's heart and power magical tools. In the capital, such tools are common. D and C rank stones are valuable, but E rank stones are nearly worthless, sometimes tossed aside. To prove it, Pelmoy picks one up from the ground and hands it to Alan. Realizing this, Alan begins carefully searching the village. With help from others, he gathers a large number of stones and uses them to create every available E-rank summon. He feels ready to test his strength. Suddenly, a gust of wind blows and one of his cards flies out, warning him that a boar is approaching. The boar attacks from behind. Alan immediately summons healing support. When the boar charges again, Papilo releases particles that put it to sleep. Then Thomas strikes, crushing its head. Another boar appears, but this time Alan's defenses hold. After defeating them all, Alan celebrates, until he realizes it was all an illusion, a scenario created by his own mind. Lying on the grass, Alan admits that for 6 years he's obsessed over how a summoner should be played, but now he understands that approach is wrong. He has to learn through real experience. He defines the roles of his summons: beasts for offense, insects for buffs, birds for scouting, plants for healing, and stone types for defense. With that realization, Alan understands the power he's building, an unmatched army of creatures, a summoning force that could surpass even the Demon King. And as he speaks the word summoning, it feels like he's stepped into the next stage. The next day, Alan, Rodin, and Gerda are summoned to the chief's house. The reason becomes clear almost immediately. The Baron himself will be visiting the village next month. Rodin and Gerda are stunned. Alan quickly understands what this means. Raising the wild boar quota to 20 wasn't enough. Now, they also have to impress a noble in person. The chief explains that the Baron wants to observe the hunt firsthand. Gerda mutters that increasing the number wasn't enough. Now he wants a performance too. Rodin says he doesn't mind, but he doesn't understand why Alan has been called. The chief reveals that someone will need to guide and host the Baron during his stay, starting with dinner the night before the hunt. He believes Alan is the best choice. Gerda questions why he doesn't assign his own son, but the chief admits his son isn't suited for the role. He turns to Alan and asks directly if he can handle the responsibility. Alan immediately understands what this really means. He's being asked to entertain a noble. The payment, some fruit, hardly seems worth it. Still, the chief mentions that the hunts have been successful largely because of Alan's intelligence. He trusts him. Alan doesn't want to deal with the Baron, but chances like this don't come often. At this pace, it would take 10 full years of hunting to earn commoner status. Rodin tells him he doesn't have to accept, but Alan sees the opportunity clearly. If he impresses the Baron, his family could be elevated. That possibility is too important to ignore. He accepts. Soon, Baron Granville arrives with his knights. As he steps from the carriage, the chief greets him respectfully. The Baron thanks him and brings along his daughter, Cecilia. Inside the chief's house, Granville praises the village of Krana for its growth over the last 15 years. He apologizes for increasing the wild boar quota, but explains that the order came from above. The chief is shocked to learn that the king himself requested it. The Baron clarifies that while it technically came from the king, it was Viscount Carnell who kept drawing attention to the hunts. The butler gently reminds the Baron to mind his tone. Dinner is served. When the Baron tastes the meat, his expression changes immediately. He's impressed. He asks what dish it is. The chef hesitates, unsure. But Alan steps forward calmly and explains that it's Alberon, prepared from thigh and liver, seasoned with herbs. The Baron asks if Alan is the chief's son. The chief clarifies he's Roden's son, leader of the hunters. The Baron studies him and comments on his black hair and eyes. Alan introduces himself and explains he will serve as their guide during the hunt. The Baron is impressed by his composure and asks if Roden once served in cavalry. The chief explains Roden comes from a servant family. Cecilia suddenly questions why a servant is standing among guests. The Baron corrects her firmly, reminding her that servants are part of the manor. She apologizes. Captain Zeno tells Alan he's looking forward to tomorrow's hunt and expects a full explanation. Zeno comments that hunting 20 boars in a year must be difficult and offers knight support if needed. Cecilia says she would love to see the knights hunt. The Baron agrees they may assist after observing. Alan calmly responds that assistance won't be necessary. 20 boars is not an impossible number. Tomorrow's hunt will prove it. The following day, the Baron reminds Zeno to protect Cecilia if needed. The gates open, and they travel to the hunting grounds. Alan guides them to an elevated observation structure built specifically for viewing the hunt. The Baron admires the planning. When the hunters arrive, Zeno notices some are wearing armor. Alan explains that last year's boars provided the materials: hardened hide, bone, and tusks forged into protection. The hunt begins. 3 men sprint into the forest to lure the boars. Alan explains that speed is critical, so they carry light equipment. While waiting, Zeno asks about Krina. A tutor will arrive in spring to prepare her for the academy. Alan struggles to picture her studying seriously. Suddenly, the first boar charges in. As it crosses the marked line, armored hunters lock it behind reinforced shields layered with boar hide. A forward striker delivers the first blow. Then the spear team steps in, less experienced hunters gaining experience. Zeno nods in approval at their coordination. The boar is pierced repeatedly before the final strike lands at the neck. Cecilia faints at the sight of blood. The hunters celebrate. Zeno tells the Baron these men may not be knights, but they are warriors. The Baron agrees they should meet their quota easily. Then 2 more boars charge in. The commander prepares to send knights, but Alan assures him it's unnecessary. The hunters split and handle both simultaneously. Cecilia briefly regains consciousness, sees the carnage, and faints again. With the hunt finished, Alan announces its conclusion. Even he admits he was nervous managing 2 at once. The Baron asks how many remain. Alan explains only 10 are left. 7 were already hunted earlier this year. The adults exchange impressed looks. Perhaps the knights truly aren't needed. Alan then makes 2 requests. First, permission to build 2 additional shield walls to increase efficiency. Second, approval to obtain goods not available locally, including trading meat for imported liquor. The Baron asks why liquor is necessary. Alan explains that if they flood the village with meat, its value will drop. Trading for imported goods stabilizes the economy, and hunters risking their lives need morale. Captain Zeno calls the reasoning sound. The Baron promises to consider it and congratulates Alan on his leadership. Cecilia looks at him coldly before leaving without a word. Alan silently hopes she returns to the city soon. Later, at the chief's house, the Baron addresses Roden, Gerda, and Alan. After what he witnessed, he decides to reward them. Roden, Gerda, and their families are officially elevated to commoner status. They are speechless. For Alan, this changes everything. As commoners, they can hunt beyond village borders, even White Dragon Mountain. Any servant who has hunted for over 10 years will also be promoted. The Baron then asks to hear the story of the hunts, so he can promote Krana as a model village. Roden recounts how 13 years ago, 100 servants were relocated to develop the land. 6 months later, disaster struck. A wild boar destroyed their winter food supply. Many fled. Roden proposed hunting instead. They killed 1 boar, but lost a friend in the process. Though they passed the trial of the gods and healed, their companion did not survive. Roden has carried that guilt ever since. The Baron acknowledges that without Roden, the village would not exist as it does today. He offers 1 additional reward: anything Roden desires. Alan hopes his father will request land or resources. Instead, Roden asks that Alan be allowed to work at the Baron's estate. He believes his son's intellect deserves greater opportunity. Alan doesn't want to leave. The Baron considers it. Even the butler agrees it's wise. The Baron appoints Alan to serve the Granville household. Cecilia protests, but the Baron reminds her Alan is now a commoner. Seeing his father crying with pride, Alan cannot refuse. The next morning, Tarisha prepares him for departure. The family is heartbroken. Friends gather to say goodbye. Krina asks if he's truly leaving. He confirms and asks her to take care. Seeing her sadness, he proposes 1 final duel. They begin. Krina attacks aggressively, but Alan blocks and counters. The parents watch with emotion. Slowly, Alan gains the upper hand. He reveals he used nearly all his magic stones to create 20 Hawkins copies, boosting his agility. As he fights, he reflects that she will attend the academy and enter royal service. They may never see each other again. He wants this farewell to matter. He disarms her and wins. Krina is stunned. Alan suggests calling it a draw and settling it next time. She smiles and accepts. After the duel, Pelmoy and Dagora arrive. Dagora silently hands Alan a dagger as a farewell gift before walking away. Finally, Alan leaves with his parents. On the road, Rodin tells him to go far and make something of himself. Alan promises he will. After several hours, they reach the Baron's carriage. Alan says goodbye and climbs aboard beside the Baron and Cecilia. As the carriage moves, he looks back and sees his mother crying through the window. And just like that, his new life begins. A few days later, Alan officially begins his duties as a manservant at the Granville estate. Upon arrival, he is immediately struck by the sheer scale and beauty of the grounds. Having never stepped foot in such a prestigious environment, the opulence takes him by surprise. However, his wonder is short-lived. Cecile immediately begins treating him like a piece of furniture, climbing onto his shoulders to use him as a step stool to reach fruit from a high branch. Though frustrated enough to consider dropping her, Alan bites his tongue and endures it. His entire family depends on this position, and he cannot afford a single mistake. When she finally climbs down and bites into the fruit, she grimaces, finding it incredibly sour. In that moment, an airship glides across the sky. It is the first time Alan has seen one in person. Having only ever read about them in books, seeing the vessel in flight fills him with genuine excitement. Despite the rough start with Cecile, he begins to think that life as a manservant might be more rewarding than he originally feared. Rickley asks how things are going with Cecile. He can tell by the look on Alan's face that it has been a struggle. Rickley sympathizes, noting that life would be easier if Alan were a hall boy instead of a manservant. Curious, Alan asks for the difference. Rickley explains that while both are junior positions, manservants are considered part of the household family, treated with dignity and included in internal matters. Hall boys, by contrast, are merely temporary helpers with no familial status. Alan is stunned to realize the honor he's been given. He finally understands why his father was moved to tears. Baron Granville hadn't just given him a job, he had granted him a level of social standing and respect that was truly life-changing. Shortly after, Alan serves breakfast to the family with meticulous care. The First Lady is impressed by his rapid progress, surprised that a former serf could display such impeccable manners and precision. During the meal, Granville mentions that Alan lacks a talent, which Cecile immediately uses as an excuse to show off. She proudly declares she possesses the wizard talent, while her brother, Mihai, is a swordsman. Granville quickly rebukes her for bragging, prompting a sheepish apology. When Granville's other daughter, Thomas, begins to cry because she also lacks a talent, the Baron comforts her gently. He reveals that he too was born without a talent, which is why he attended the Nobles' College, the very place he met their mother and started his family. Inspired by her father's success, Thomas dries her tears. With his duties finished for the day, Alan uses his afternoon off to explore the town. He is fascinated by how advanced the city is compared to his rural village. He eventually finds the Adventurer Guild and tries to register, but the receptionist informs him that he must be 12 years old. He is currently only 8. Undeterred, Alan decides to study the notice board anyway. He memorizes the habits of local monsters and takes note of rumors regarding a legendary white dragon. An adventurer named Raven approaches and tries to chase him off, claiming the guild is no place for a child. Instead of leaving, Alan uses the encounter as a chance to gather intel. Through clever questioning, he manages to trick Raven into revealing the specific strengths and weaknesses of the local monsters. Once Raven's party arrives to head out, Alan departs, satisfied with his new knowledge. The next morning, Alan heads to the town gates. He presents his servant pass to the guard, who recognizes the Granville crest and immediately clears the way. After walking for a while without spotting any prey, Alan summons 5 hawks to scout the terrain. One of them soon signals that it has located a group of goblins. Alan summons 5 saber-toothed tigers, which charge forward and wipe out the goblins effortlessly. Alan even joins in, delivering a final blow with a well-aimed rock. The victory earns him 1000 XP. He collects the magic stones and continues the hunt. By sunset, Alan has earned over 16,000 XP and leveled up twice. He also gains valuable buffs for his summons and deeper insight into D-rank monster behavior. As darkness falls, the hawks refuse to fly, making it impossible to scout. Alan suddenly realizes he has been relying entirely on them for directions and is now lost in the deep woods. After a long struggle through the brush, he finally manages to navigate his way back to the estate. A month later, Alan visits a local blacksmith to buy iron balls for hunting, paying 60 silver coins. He feels a quiet pride in having reached level 12 so quickly. Upon returning home, he is met by the butler, Sebas, who says the Baron wants a word. In the office, Granville praises Alan's work ethic but questions his long absences on his days off. Alan decides to be honest, explaining that he spends his free time hunting monsters, as it is in his blood as a hunter's son. Granville is genuinely impressed and offers a deal. The estate will purchase all the meat Alan brings back for 1 silver per piece. 6 months later, Alan is back in the forest when his hawks begin acting strangely, signaling an emergency. He follows them to find Raven's party cornered by a large group of goblins. Raven is badly wounded, leaving his comrades Rita and Milsai to make a desperate stand. Not wanting to reveal his summoning abilities to strangers, Alan jumps into the fray himself. With his stats now over 300, he handles the D-rank monsters with ease. Once the threat is neutralized, he uses a healing flower on Raven, miraculously restoring him to full health. Raven recognizes Alan from the guild and is deeply grateful. Before Alan can leave, the party insists on repaying him. Alan keeps his request simple. He asks them to gather 100 E-rank magic stones for him, which they happily agree to deliver the following week. Later, Alan pulls his hawk, Hawkins, aside to ask why he flew beyond his 3-kilometer limit. Seeing the hawk's reaction, Alan realizes the creature acted out of empathy for the dying adventurers. He realizes his summons aren't just tools, they possess their own feelings and judgment. He apologizes for his harsh tone and pets Hawkins, deepening their bond. Returning to his daily routine, Alan once again finds himself acting as a human step stool, so Lady Cecile can reach some jam on a high shelf. He keeps his balance perfectly, dedicated to his dual life of humble service and secret adventure. They end up falling anyways. And that's all for this week. Please like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.